rifle, my pony, and me. Hey! Welcome to another edition of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains. Today, we're going to join Jack San Felice up at the Silver King as he tells us what the law was like up in that territory. Jack, take it away.
There was no law. There was the law of the gun, really. And that's why when they caught holdup men, they usually, if a holdup man just stole money, they got a posse and they chased them. But if a stagecoach robber shot and killed somebody on a stagecoach, they never let those guys go. And when they caught them, it was Judge Lynch was the law.
Well, you said 2 deputies and a sheriff.
That's it.
Was there a big turnover? How long did someone last in office?
Yeah, sheriffs usually stayed in office about 4 years, 2 years. There was 2 years, and then they probably get another election to go through 4 years. But chasing around these mountains for outlaws all that time, you know, was not a good thing. And it could wear you out. And you didn't make a lot of money. So if stagecoach robberies were down, you didn't get a lot. The law of the gun really prevailed back in the days of the Old West. And
we always hear about the Wild West. Was it really wild up there?
Arizona was the Old West, by the way. It had the Apache Indians, it had cowboys, it had miners, all right? I mean, it had it all, really, as far as the Old West goes. There were, like I say, there was a sheriff and a couple of deputies. And over here, that was at Florence.
Okay, I know what a posse is, and we always hear the word, but what exactly is a posse, and where did the word come from?
And they followed the old common law rule of posse comitatus, in the power of the county, which is what it means, Latin for power of the county. That's how the word posse became, got its name, really. So the sheriff could enact, and back east, he could enact a law called posse comitatus, and they'd go out. Back east, there weren't many deputies either.
All right, you're talking about a posse. How did they put one together?
So the county sheriff would go out and he'd ask people to volunteer. Now, why they would volunteer is that Wells Fargo, for every holdup man they caught, they could get $300. It was a standing offer of Wells Fargo. Any stagecoach protected by Wells Fargo, any holdup man they caught was $300. Now, the sheriff would get this, and if there were men with him, they would split it. Plus, the owners who shipped the bullion would give 25% of the mined bullion that was taken for capturing and bringing back alive or otherwise the holdup men or stagecoach robbers. So that wasn't too bad. 25%, you could do okay with 25% of the bullion. If it's bullion and not a doré bar with all the metals, but bullion with the gold and silver in it.
Well, if the law was in Florence, I mean...
Yeah, the law was in Florence.
Let's face it, with all the bars around here, there had to be a lot of disagreement, shall we say?
Oh, there was a lot of fights, but usually they let guys fight it out, and I'll tell you the story about Ben Reagan. This will wrap it all up for you, how the law worked in the Old West. Ben Reagan was one of the founders of the Silver King mine. Ben Reagan was a man of all trades. In Pinell City, they closed the bar. He also worked in the bar. He was a justice of the peace. See, they had justice of the peace. He was a JP. He was a reverend, and he was also the coroner, and he was the man in charge of burying people, like funeral director. Like he would bury them. He'd judge them and then bury them and hang them if he could. And anyhow, a drunk comes in on Sunday morning. They close the bars on Sunday till noon or 1 o'clock to have church services, okay? It comes into where Ben is a minister also. He's given a church service. A drunk comes in and he wants a drink. Well, Ben says, you interrupted my service, and that's a fine. You know, that's how the fines got for interrupting church services. That's where it started, because they used saloons as churches.
I've gotten in trouble at church before, but you know, I've never been fined.
If you interrupt the church service, you were fined or went to jail. So he chased them out, came back. He chased them out again. Third time, the guy come in. He starts a fight with Ben. Fist fight. The fist fight got into knives. It got to be a knife fight. And Ben was the winner of the fight. Okay? Now Ben turned around, he kills the guy. He turned around, Ben he closes the church early services, and he gets 6 men for a coroner's inquest. They have a coroner's inquest, and he's now the coroner also. And so they have an inquest, and they find the man guilty of assault with a deadly weapon and to be punished whatever. And they also find that he was involved in an altercation with another man, and he got his just desserts. Okay? That's usually the way it read. He got what was coming to him. So now they got the body. He's been judged. He's by a coroner's report. The JP has judged him. Now they got to get rid of the body. Well, anybody want the body? Nobody wanted to take the body, to bury it up to the cemetery. And that just designate a place for a cemetery, usually on a hill, and that's where they buried people. There was no burial permits. There was no such thing as a death certificate. They just buried you, and they marked it in the Bible, or they marked it in the sheriff's log when he came around, and they would give the Justice of Peace kept a log book. So they write it in there, or the coroner kept a log book. They wrote it, and the coroner's reports were in there. And now they got to do this body. Well, Ben Reagan says, well, I'll take him. I need a donation. So he gets a donation from the church. Then he got a donation for judging this guy guilty, and then a donation for burying him. Ben Reagan was a man who wore a lot of hats.
So he killed him, then he found him guilty.
Yeah. Well, they got into the fight, and then he killed him, then he found him guilty. And then they had judged him that the other combatant was innocent, was in self-defense, see. And that's how a lot of those things took place.
Well, I consider myself lucky even making it here to jail, because a lot didn't make it this far. And they became mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.